Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. People of Reddit who have experienced crazy sightings such as aliens, cryptids, UFOs, dogmans, mothmans, stairs in the woods, etc. What are your stories? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I moved into a new place around 15 and kept hearing scratching noises and rustling outside. I always assumed it was animals. One year we had to put up some defense on the window, don't remember why, and my father said the grass and bushes around my window were like how a carpet is after you step on it, and he said that the tracks belonged to either a human or something with human feet. This was years after the first time I heard the rustling and scratching. To know that someone was outside my window still terrifies me. A couple of weeks after my first husband died, I woke up one night and heard the floorboards in my son's bedroom make a noise. Suddenly, he started laughing. He was 2 and started shouting, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And he started talking about his day, what he did and what he ate. I went to his room to see what he was doing, and he was in his baby bed, couldn't have gotten out, and was stretching out his arms as to be picked up, and we were talking to the corner of the room. I'm not gonna lie, stories like these warm my heart and give me hope for something, so. Driving on the highway in Ontario, Canada, late in the night, we pulled over off the highway so one of us could make a pit stop. As my friend was urinating, I saw a tall figure in the trees walking around. It started getting closer to my friend, who was just off the highway in the bush. I rolled down the window and told my friend, "There's something in the trees coming at you, get back to the car." My friend sees it and decides to whistle at it. Sure enough, the thing whistles back. It sounded like it was whistling and humming at the same time. My friend yelled in terror and ran back to the car. We were out of there fast down the highway. When I went to stay with my uncle for the weekend, we took his dog for a walk 3 times a day, once in the morning, once before lunch, and one at like 10 to 11 p.m. at night. So he lives in rural England. Lots of farms, tight country lanes, and night it gets very dark. So we come along to a small fence. He lifts the dog over and I just hop over as I'm pretty tall. We start walking along and end up in an orchard. As it gets darker, I turn my phone light on and look around. I feel as if something is watching me, but could feel it was quite close. I look to the left and down the aisles of trees, I see something very tall and humanoid walk past, as if it was following me and my uncle. I turned to him and said, "Did you see that too?" And I point to the trees, and he replied with, "Kinda, yeah." We carry on walking and get to near the end. He sees the tree as away as I do. The humanoid being was watching us. It must have been at least 8 feet tall. It was staring back at us, and as the dog started barking in its direction, the being walked off after the dog stopped barking. My family and I saw a woman staring into a window once. It was late at night, past midnight. We live in a remote little town called Salton City. There are many houses here that halted construction midway. This was one of those houses. The woman was wearing a long white dress and had long straight black hair, very stereotypical of a horror movie. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it, and my parents do not talk about it to this day. They are religious people, and I think this really freaked them out. In so many of the stories that people share, and I've read a bunch, I constantly hear long white dress, long black hair, and I just wondered what people would do if they saw a ghost in like, I don't know, a plaid dress and a purple mohawk. Like, give me some variety. One afternoon during my senior year in high school, a friend of mine and I were hanging out on my back porch. I forgot which of us noticed it first, but we saw a cylindrical-shaped spinning object traversing the sky. It was low enough so that we could clearly see its shape and color, white, but made no sound whatsoever. My friend actually tried to call the airport and ask them if they saw any anomaly, which of course they didn't, so who knows what that thing was. My wife and another couple and I were driving on a curvy road one night, and I turned a sharp left, and what I saw was a woman covered in blood wearing a white, beat-up dress. She was in the middle of the road, so I swerved and landed in someone's yard. I thought I was going crazy, yet before I said anything, everyone in the car yelled, "Did you see that?" At that point, I knew I wasn't seeing shit. We got all out, and there wasn't a soul in sight. We ended up calling the cops because we couldn't accept that it was a ghost or some paranormal crap. I'm still spooked to this day. So when I was about 9 to 10 years old, my family had to make it to an early morning flight. It was about 4 or 5 a.m., and I was just looking out the window when all of a sudden we stopped at a red light and there was a person in brown robes with a scarecrow-looking mask just staring at us. I was the only one who noticed, and we just drove away, but he kept on scaring and eventually walked off. Not particularly supernatural or anything, but I still think about it a lot. Back in the late 80s, we went on a field trip in the rural Midwest to a lake. We spent a day hiking, fishing, sunbathing, whatever. However, on the way there, we were on a school bus on a backcountry road. There were two cylindrical-shaped or cigar-shaped things in the sky. They looked metallic. They were quite some distance away, but they looked effing massive. Like a half dozen large passenger airplanes, end-to-end type massive, probably bigger than that. I grew up on the ocean, and am fully aware without a frame of reference it is tough to judge size and distance of large objects. The surface looked to have shading and slight differences in appearance, like maybe the object wasn't smooth but no wings or other aircraft features. The only frame of reference I had was a big-ass hill. These things were behind the hill and seemed just as big. The funny thing is, everyone saw them, but no one wanted to acknowledge it. For a second I thought I was seeing shit and was going to ask the kid next to me if he saw it, but I looked and saw him staring at them. I asked him what they were, and we got a shrug and I don't know. I wished it was a cool ending, like we were shot at by lasers or were abducted and forced to light to the death, but we just drove and eventually they were out of sight. What were they? I have no idea. I've never seen anything that size in the sky before or since, much less two of them. I've worked at racetracks and seen blimps overhead, and that isn't even close for size. I've worked at airports and even the biggest planes aren't close. The science part of me will always wonder what those were, but the rational part of me knows I'll never find the answer. Well, my English is not very good, but I try my best. I live in a house with 2 stages. I sleep in the first stage. I was alone and it was night when I suddenly heard somebody above walking. I got out of my room and said hello. I thought maybe my parents are back and I haven't heard them, but nobody answered and the noises stopped, so I walked back into my room. 1 minute later, I heard again walking above, but this time it got much scarier because out of nowhere the TV was working. I don't get scared very fast, so I walked upstairs and closed the TV. But then, when I was again in my room, I heard that the TV was back on. I walked again upstairs and wanted to close again the TV, but when I was in front of the TV, it closed itself. In this moment, I had the goosebumps of my life and I just ran downstairs. I was in my garden one night when I was around 21 or 22. I look up and see a blue shining dot in the sky doing small circular motions faster and faster, and it's kind of wobbling and circling, then it zooms off leaving a blue streak behind it. Up until that point, I was always under the impression UFO sightings were BS, but now about 10 years later I'm convinced I saw something. Early 2000s, I'm in Cub Scouts, the elementary school version of Boy Scouts, on a camping trip. I'm about 10ish around this time. I wake up quite late at night and need to pee. The bathrooms are a little ways away and I don't want to walk to them. So I walk over to the wooded area and start peeing on a tree, like you do. I'm about done when I notice a large figure standing in front of me. This thing is majorly tall. I would have put it at 9 to 11 feet tall. It had a pure black face that looked like it could pull you in if you looked too long. And the weird thing is, I wasn't scared. I felt perfectly safe around this thing. I asked if it was going to hurt me, and it didn't make a sound. It reached out and handed me a light gray rock that is what I assume to be concrete, which is strange considering that the only source of concrete was a road over a mile away. I think I blacked out or something, because I have no memory of returning to my tent, only waking up there. I think it was some weird fever dream until I get home. I'm looking for clothes to put in the wash, and there, sitting in the bottom of the bag, is the rock. Not really a silhouette, but when my grandfather passed away, I took his watch. As I took it, I noticed that it was loose, so I decided to tighten it by removing specific parts. While I was, a rusty, small nail stung my finger, and I threw the nail on the ground in a panic. After that, I started searching it on the ground, but eventually gave up because it was so small. After I completed my fixing part, I left the house, and when I came back, the little nail was there on the table, which I was fixing the watch. Felt wholesome. As a kid, I used to hate going to bed because almost every night shadowy figures would watch me sleep, only when I had my back turned and was facing the wall. Or I could hear whispers and noises from my closet. I would feel something watching me, so every time I would turn around in bed to see what it was always shadowy figures standing there watching me sleep. But it would run to my closet once I looked at it. It had footsteps as well. Other times, if I covered myself completely in a blanket, kid me thought it actually worked lol, I could feel something gently touching me as if to scare me. I would uncover myself from the blanket and nothing would be there. I shared a room with my grandmother, so I would wake her up and tell her what I saw, terrified out of my kid mind. She would just tell me it was an after-image projection from the TV, LMAO. I would go some nights without sleeping because of this, but would still hear whispers from my closet. I've had sleep paralysis before, plus I usually always figure it out and wake up right away. But these incidents sure as hell felt really effing different. I could move around and talk. Another time, I heard evil snickering from my closet. I knew where everyone in my house was, small house. No idea what the hell that was either. Like 8 years ago, I lived in an attic in a Michigan home, and I constantly had things happen there that I can't explain. One time I had an extremely vivid dream, which is rare for me because I'm a restless sleeper, that a baseball was floating at me very slowly. In this dream, everything was in slow motion, and all I could focus on was the baseball coming towards me. Once the baseball made contact with me, I woke up in my bedroom, and my dog's rope toy came flying across the room and hit me in the chest. When I looked over in the direction, the room was pitch black. However, there were 3 sets of windows in the room, and it always had moonlight illuminated to a certain degree. I called my dog because it totally like him to want to play at weird hours, but he was at my side. Another time, I felt someone crawl into bed and lay next to me like they were about to spoon me. The weight of whatever it was literally shifted the bed around. When I finally mustered the courage to roll over and see what crawled into bed, there was nothing there. I was close friends with the girl that previously lived in that room before me, and she said she had experienced this more than one occasion. This was really long, back when I was 9 or something, and we'd moved into our neighboring city. Now, this city was a real commercial hub, and most people had their workplaces located here. Naturally, it was difficult for us to find a house, so after about a year of house hunting, we found a place here. Our old contract was ending, so we jumped on the offer. It was on a high floor and had a great view of the skyline. Anyway, my memory is a little fuzzy, but this house was weird. I mean, I had some pretty great times there, but the building made you feel uneasy for some reason. I have some photos of the corridors, and even though they were well lit, the photos came out dark. The neighbors never opened the door, and I had only 2 friends there. The first thing that we noticed about the house was that the door always rattled, and it had a chain to lock it, so we kinda heard it all day. It was kinda pronounced at night though. To be honest, everything was elevated at night. I was in the middle of my 5 Nights at Freddy's obsession back then, so everything seemed so much pronounced to me. I could always feel something watching. I used to do this thing where I blinked and looked at the burn image. I think it's called persistence of vision. Every time I did that, I saw a silhouette of a tall human. No defining features, just a black-colored blob of a head. It was a while before I actually saw shit. The first time, I thought I saw my mom enter the adjoining room. The house was small, so I called out to her, only for her to answer from the kitchen. My memories are fuzzy, but I think I definitely saw some shadow figures. They never appeared in brightly lit areas. It was always in the corridor, and they were about 6 feet tall. I never ventured out of my room at night for some reason, not even to get water. Every time I tried, I saw that black silhouette and noped. Once I made a deal with him that if he didn't bother me, I wouldn't bother him. So I guess that's why he didn't hurt me. I also used to talk to him and ask him to make choices for me. Like, if I should get the ice cream, please creak the windows. If not, then don't do anything. Silence. Okay, then I'll just get the biscuits. I think it was either my imagination or that area was a hotspot for shadow people. The garden out front always had them. That's why our parents forbade us to go up the stairs to the glade area. Creepy as shit, but was kinda normal. We finally moved out though. After that, the only other sighting I had was when a shadow guy stared at me from across the parking lot in front of the house until I flipped him the bird and shut the curtains. Kinda different from the others, but a couple years ago, I was having a really rough day. The long and the short of it was our oldest cat wasn't doing well, and my parents had decided that that was the day to take him for his last vet visit, which he didn't even make it to since he passed in the car on the way. That night I played in bed trying to hold back the tears when I distinctly felt a cat jump up on my bed and curl up next to me, just like our recently deceased one had done years ago. Thing is, my door was closed, so the other cats couldn't get in, and even when he was alive, he hadn't done that in years. I'm sure there's a rational explanation for this, but I choose to believe he decided to pay me one last visit before moving on from the world. 4 years ago, in NorCal, I was driving home at 1 a.m. I looked up and there was a triangular ship with lights on each point flying pretty high. After stopping and staring at it for about 4 minutes, it just lifted straight up into the sky slowly at first, but then after rising for a few seconds, it sped up unbelievably fast, still going straight up, then just blipped out and it was gone. I grew up on an Air Force base, and in fact I lived near one now. My family would regularly go to the flight line and watch planes at night and listen to my mystery radio. I've never seen an aircraft do that. Living near an Air Force base may make it more understandable that there's probably a rational explanation for your sightings, but maybe not always, so keep it up. I was in rural Louisiana one night outside smoking a cigarette when I saw what I thought were 2 helicopters side by side in the distance. I thought they were helicopters because they had these lights that appeared to be circling. I thought that they must be on the ends of the blades. They started coming my direction, then seemed to meld together into one sort of strobing light. As it got closer, I could start to make out that it was a bunch of lights shining out and moving around. Once I realized that it was coming directly towards me, I ran inside the house and watched out the window in the direction that it would be flying over. It was a little higher than the treetops, and the lights were too dazzling to make out a clear shape. It flew a few hundred feet over towards my neighbor's house, where it stopped for a few seconds. I was finally able to make out its shape. It looked kind of oblong. It hovered there for a moment, then shot kind of up a bit and to the northeast about a couple hundred feet, almost instantly, then shot straight up and disappeared. I have no idea what it was, but it never made a noise the whole time. I don't know what could fly that slowly, then hover, then shoot off like that and not make a sound.